Thanks very much for joining us, and welcome to Access First webinar on how to recruit successful salespeople in your company. My name is John Hughes, and I'm an international account manager with Access First, dealing mostly with the UK, but with many different territories as well.
And my name is Adi Schnall. I'm also an international account manager, but I'm primarily responsible for our expansion in North America.
We're going to talk about the most effective way you can hire salespeople. We're also going to share with you the results of a survey taken with several different sellers on the market, and to go into a little more detail on how you can recruit more successful salespeople into your company. So, to begin with, we're going to talk about what makes the best salespeople, what they do, and what it is that others don't do. First of all, let's look at our favorite thing at Access First, some stats. And within the world of sales, the gap between the highest performers and the lowest is quite startling. The highest performers, for example, on average, will achieve 3 times more results than the lower performers, and can achieve 7 times more sales than the lowest. And it's those top performers that can leave clients 3 times more satisfied than those who perform less well. And the last factor also is that those higher performers can retain loyal customers at a far higher rate than bad salespeople. The majority of our results today concern our customers who've taken advantage of our talent review, which helps them to understand the main characteristics that their sellers have in terms of behavior, motivation, and reasoning. And what we want to share with you is what are the main characteristics present in those high performers, but also those that are engaged in the culture and the values of their company. Within this study, we looked at a group of 2,784 people, and we analyzed their performance. Within that, we identified 640 low performers. Those people that, unfortunately, did not provide the company with the kind of results they were looking for. 1,810 whom we have classed as contributors, meaning they don't outshine, but neither do they underperform. And 333 people who were identified as high performers, meaning those who were well within or above the statistics I spoke of at the beginning of this webinar. Within this group of people, we looked at both their education and their level of sales experience, dividing those between graduates and undergraduates, and those with sales experience and those without. But who are they actually? And by that we mean all those things that you do not see on their CV. So, we also looked at their reasoning, their thinking. And thanks to Access First Solutions, we look at 5 different elements. With their motivation, we look at 20 different key drivers, and their personality, also studying 20 different behavioral traits through the prism of what is known as the Big 5 or ocean analysis. And by adding these key elements, this is what we discovered. In terms of predicting how well a candidate will perform in a sales job, what are the key factors to look at in terms of predicting their success? In fact, university or not, education played only a 3% role in helping recruiters identify a good sales performer. Previous sales experience is not necessarily an indicator either, with just 8%. Not a valid indicator for you to be able to place someone in your business. However, if you take into account the way that they think, we move on to a predictive success rate of 18%. What motivates them even more at 37%, and who they are, how they will behave, 48%, a combined predictive power of 65%. The idea is not to forget that person's education or that person's experience, But as I hope we will show today, and key to what Access First does when it comes to looking at soft skills, is that particularly when it comes to a job such as sales, much more so with retail, you can find your top performers from various walks of life, because the main characteristics it takes to do well are behavioral and cannot be garnered solely from their education or their past experience. So, what are the key factors we look for in terms of how someone thinks? The main one, which we've identified in terms of sales, is how someone deals with the unexpected. Vital for many different jobs, but if we're looking at sales, we can prepare all we want, but when we have a customer in front of us, there's always something we have not foreseen, and how we take into account those needs there and then within the sales process are extremely important. In terms of motivations, we have identified several essential to sales. First of all, to go beyond their everyday tasks. Now, this could be their targets, it could be what is expected of them from their company or clients, but it's those who give more and want to give more that make for good salespeople. The second is having influence. Again, good salespeople guide and control their sales. Those that can influence the behavior and purchasing of their clients are those that do well. Those that invest and push themselves without reserve, very much linked to this first point, and also to achieve success regularly. Obviously, salespeople are judged on their results, often by turnover, but those that seek it are better served by the role. And finally, to help others goes hand in hand with the influence over the customer. Salespeople are also guided by their desire to please the client. For personality traits, what are the key factors? Those who spontaneously approach others, those willing to make contact, who are happy to seek new people, to discover their needs, who are unafraid to prospect and find new clients, or simply to approach people within a shop environment, while at the same time manage to communicate tactfully and diplomatically. Connects emotionally means someone who is able to forge a strong bond and link with others and to put themselves in their place. Open to other people's ideas, again, someone who can understand their clients' needs, but who can also find the best solution for them. Somebody who goes beyond assigned tasks. That's linked with the traits we saw in motivation, someone willing to give more of themselves and to go the extra mile. Demonstrates inventiveness, someone who can respond to the customer within a given time. Even the best salespeople are no good if they're not able to think on their feet. And focuses on the positive. A salesperson needs to be powered by positive and forward thinking. And finally, controls own feelings. This demonstrates diplomacy. Every salesperson must fashion their communication to their customer's need. So, why should we get rid of the CV? Or at least, when we look at the influential factors in understanding a salesperson, why is the CV of so little importance? As we saw before, in terms of pre-selecting a candidate into your business, both experience, someone might have been in sales before, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily good at it, and their CV are not clear indicators of future success. Interviews, whether clearly defined or not, have a very limited impact as well. Everybody will tell you they're great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they actually are. But if you start to look at their behaviors, the way someone naturally behaves, their thinking and reasoning power, both together as you see at the end of this graph, you start to get a much better understanding of how they will actually behave in reality when they're doing the job. So why do recruiters still look at CVs? Because ultimately, they have no other way of doing it. Whereas those that deal with sales and retail each day know full well that personality plays a huge part in client-facing roles. They're just unaware of how to accurately measure those key factors that we've been talking about. Addy.
Thank you, John. So that's where Assess First comes in. So here at Assess First, we can look at your entire pool of candidates or existing employees if you're focusing on internal mobility and find the ones who are not only engaged, but also performing well in their job. Meaning, they not only have the technical capacity to succeed in the role, but are also happy, engaged, and will continue to come into work every day. The way that we do that is by understanding who they really are. So, what does that mean exactly? Well, the way we at Assess First do this is that we've developed 3 evaluations to understand a candidate's potential, which looks at their reasoning skills, their motivations, and their personality. We call the reasoning skills the brain, which determines how well and how quickly someone processes information. We call motivations drive, which explains the level of commitment someone will have in a role and what elements drive them to continuously come into work engaged. And we call personality shape, which is going to tell you how someone will behave in an everyday work context, as well in a stressful situation. So each module takes around 10 minutes to complete, and what you get in the end is a comprehensive understanding of what we call are a person's natural talents. So what Assess First has developed in the last 5 years is the predictive approach, which is where we can link someone's results, their natural talents, to a predictive model. Now, a predictive model refers to the attributes someone could have or someone should have in order to be both successful and committed in their job. So, the first thing we like to do with this information is to create a match between a candidate and that specific job to know if their natural talents will serve as a fit for the tasks involved for that specific position. Second, we can match that person to an entire team, meaning where they'll fit with their manager and colleagues in terms of their working style, social approach, and actually 10 other behavior categories that we measure. And thirdly, we can match them into the overall culture of the workplace. So we've seen with many of our clients before using Assess First is that when people leave a job quickly, it's rarely due to the fact that they can't perform in the job in terms of their technical skills. It's more that there's a clash or a misunderstanding between them and the workplace or the personalities inside the workplace. What's more is that this clash is often due to the cultural environment of the company. And that is what Assess First sets out to do with our predictive reports, to allow you as a recruiter and a representative of the company to define what that company culture is and evaluate the candidate's match in the context of all 3 of these areas. So how do we do that? We try to make it as simple as possible for you. So once you've chosen your predictive model, you can launch it into your recruitment campaign. So the idea of this recruitment campaign is to create a dossier where you can see all the candidates for the job and the respective fit with your predictive models. So this will help you save time because the tools will automatically rank all the candidates for you so you can focus your time and energy on only the best. Now, this all sounds great, but the reason you can actually trust our expertise is because in the past 6 years, we've developed what we call is an algorithm that studies the 5 million profiles that we've aggregated since our inception in 2002 and has generated over 400 benchmark models that can be used in an international context directly on the platform. But we recognize that every company has their own culture and needs when it comes to finding the right people. For example, you're not going to look for the same profile when hiring for a pharmaceutical sales rep as you would for retail. So through our AI, we give you the opportunity to create your own customized predictive model that will be adapted to your company's specific needs. So we give you the option to concretely define exactly what type of profile you want to find for each function. Now, this tool right here allows you to analyze your contacts, meaning your existing employees who are already in the position that you're trying to fill. And you'll add the name of your predictive model. So we can use an example here, or we'll call it in-house sales representatives for October 2018. And then all you have to do is select a function for that role. So in this case, we'll select sales. And once you've done that, all you have to do is add or upload the contacts that you want to use as a reference for your model, meaning people in your company who have already taken the assessment and are consequently added to your contact base. So you can even group employees together on the platform so you can select them all at once. So you can see right here, we've added all of our sales representatives. And all you have to do to launch the AI is to evaluate each person on just 2 different criteria. The first is performance, which should be quite objective for most of you. Most of you in HR as managers, you already have your KPIs in place for your salespeople, whether they meet or exceed those sales targets, for example. And then the second criteria is to evaluate their attitude. So that's going to consider their behavior with their managers and towards the overall business culture. So in order to complete the criteria, the platform is in a very straightforward way, has you rate each one on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 of course being unsatisfactory or problematic, and 5 being exceptional. So once you've completed this rating from your sample of employees, the artificial intelligence is going to analyze the personalities, the motivations, the aptitude, so the 3 assessments, along with their performance and attitude, so your contribution to the predictive model. It's going to analyze all those scores, and it's going to create the most accurate predictive model. On top of that, it's going to tell you the rarity of the profile sought after, which means basically how easy or difficult it will be to find that type of profile for that specific role. And what you'll get in a very visual and easy to interpret depiction is a breakdown of the predictive model, highlighting for you the fundamental factors that are important to succeed in that job. It's also going to tell you what's going to keep your existing employees motivated, successful, and engaged, as well as the level of reasoning skills needed for someone to succeed in that role. So these are all factors you do not want to look over in an interview with that candidate. When it comes to hiring your salespeople, you can teach strategy, you can teach tactics, you can teach software, but what you can't teach and what you can't understand from someone's resume is how their personality and their motivations are aligned with the job. So this customized predictive model is going to make those factors easy to identify for you and help you ask the right questions during your interview. So once you have your predictive model complete based on your top performers, you can go ahead and launch a recruitment campaign that you see here to actually start looking at your candidates. So here you can see everyone who's taken the assessment connected to your predictive model on the left and the details of their score for each of the shape, drive, and brain. I also want to add that we've recently developed a feature called a manager fit, which will help you understand the level of affinity between the candidate and their future manager on a scale from 1 to 5, which you can see here on the right. So once you're satisfied with the amount of applicants that you've had for that specific campaign, what we've done for you is created a feature that saves you a significant amount of time, and we like to call it our magic button. So what this does is analyze your contacts more precisely in terms of their individual overall scores. And here you can see very easily in blue who has the greatest potential and should be shortlisted to the next step of recruitment. Inversely, you'll also see the individuals in red who show a greater disparity and a weaker potential to succeed in the role. I also just want to point out that the idea here is not to say that those in red can't or shouldn't be contacted. We still leave that decision completely up to you. It's more to help you focus your time on those who demonstrate the highest potential to perform in that role. And if for whatever reason you're not satisfied with the pre-selection, then you'll at least have a better understanding as to why certain people were chosen, and you'll be able to consider the details as to how and why they received the score that they did. So when you click on someone's individual score right here, you're not going to just see a number. Assess First is going to give you a breakdown behind, in this example, John Doe's suitability for the role of sales director in the United States. So that score is broken down by 2 main elements. The first measuring his potential for success, so to actually perform well in the job. And the second measuring his potential for commitment, meaning how he will thrive and at what level he's going to be engaged in the job. Now here in this radar graph, which we saw as part of the predictive model earlier and how John explained earlier in the webinar about the traits of personality, is John's shape results, meaning the numbers seen are linked with our predictive model for that role. So we actually break our analysis down into 20 different aspects of someone's personality based on that big 5 taxonomy of traits. Here you can see there's leadership influence, consideration of others, creativity and adaptability, rigor in work, and personal balance. And you can see where all of his results hit on green, that's going to indicate the behaviors that he possesses that serve to his success in that role. And of course, on the contrary, should anything hit in the red, then that's going to indicate behaviors that might not be suitable and consequently lower his overall score. So right underneath, you can see very clearly how we break down the strengths and weaknesses of an individual's behavior potential for that role through our algorithm. And you can see here, for example, one of John Doe's weaknesses is that he waits for others to approach him, right? So if he's someone you plan on interviewing for a sales director role, you can ask them a relevant question in the interview to better understand if that's something that could pose as a problem or a hindrance in his performance in the future. Same goes here with the engagement potential, where the prominent motivations associated with the role are listed, and the candidate's level of compatibility is marked for each respective trait in descending order in easy-to-read color coding. And finally, we're going to provide you with an analysis of John Doe's motivations that fall in line with a sales director role and those that don't. So this is going to be important information to keep in mind when thinking about questions during an interview or reducing your pool of candidates. So all these elements that you saw combined will contribute to John Doe's overall score of 88% potential to succeed in this example as a sales director. The important thing to keep in mind here is that each candidate will receive a custom score based on their individual characteristics linked to a specific role. And we know that traditional practices look at CVs, they look at educational background and previous work experience. But as John explained earlier to you, those strategies are ineffective and a bit tired. And what Assess First does is we can quantify all the other contributing elements to determine someone's potential to succeed and stay committed in a role. So our goal here is to empower you with as much information as possible about an individual's capabilities so that you can make the most informed decision about who the best fit is for your company and the company's culture. On top of that, we like to make it awesome. So by company culture, we also refer to the company's employees. So whether it's two colleagues or a new candidate and their manager, we can also determine the capacity and facility in which two people will work together. So let's take an example between our John Doe here and Cassie Schaefer. And what we'll do is analyze 7 different elements of their professional affinity and provide you with a helpful guide on how to plan these two people working together. On top of that, we can explain if their score is due to the fact that their profiles are similar or in fact complementary to each other. So the areas that you see here in green, that's going to indicate where there's a clear affinity and where their individual working styles complement each other well. Gray is the not so much. It's not going to affect things one way or the other. And red is where you'll have to take more effort for them to find a common ground. So this way, if you as a manager know that you're going to be working closely with a coworker or a subordinate, you can anticipate where you guys are going to work well, and you can also anticipate where you might face some challenges before you even get started on the project. We make it smart. Here at Assess First, we talk a lot about recruiting. But of course, in HR, you guys know that you're also responsible for internal recruiting processes or promotions. So where you can use Assess First platform in that regard is to help identify those employees with the best potential to progress in one or multiple roles. So those roles could be the next step up in the company, or if someone's even looking to change their career path within the company, you can do that as well. So you can see the suitability of multiple employees for multiple roles in the same step. For example, you can see if someone wants to move up to a regional sales manager, they want to make a lateral move to an in-house sales representative, or shift towards a customer sales and post-sales role. So what you do is you can pull these people together on the platform. For example, you can name them your sales managers. You can even add an individual outside of the group if you like. And in one click, you can see the employees and the coworkers' individual potential for each of these roles, measuring how easily they will succeed and thrive in each one of the positions that you pre-selected. Because as we saw in the beginning of the presentation, success and happiness are not mutually exclusive when it comes to work.
Thank you, Eddie. So we help you achieve success with Assess First, but it's very important if you are to work with us that we actually see what your recruiting process was like before using Assess First and what it actually happens or what it actually is after using Assess First. So we like to help you achieve long-term success. We looked at some of the stats before in terms of predicting success in a sales role, what kind of factors play into that. But what kind of stats do we have as Assess First in terms of the kind of impact that using a platform like ours makes to your recruiting process and the effectiveness of the people that you hire? The main one that we have is, and these are general stats for the companies that we work with, that after using Assess First, people have seen an increase in performance by 15%. Again, on sales roles, that's quite easy to measure in terms of turnover or in terms of targets that people have hit. We've seen a decrease in hiring costs by minus 20%. And that goes hand in hand with a minus 30% in terms of the time it takes to recruit. Because when Addy showed you the recruitment campaign, that's a brilliant way for you to basically pre-select, spend more quality time on people that you already know have a good chance of doing well on the job based on their mindset, not necessarily just on their skill set, so that you can actually identify those key players very, very quickly. And the huge one, and this is a massive statistic, and this comes back to soft skills or what we were talking about, or this idea of looking at somebody in terms of how they behave, in terms of what motivates them and how they think. If you get somebody whose natural talents are linked with the job, it's undoubtable that they're going to stay longer on the job. Assets First, ourselves, we work with over 3,500 customers in over 30 different countries around the world. There's been over 5 million people that have actually taken the Assets First evaluation. Here you get an idea of the wide range of different clients that we do work with, many in retail, but you can also see that we work with companies like Accor Invest, with Air France, with Burger King, we work with Total, we work with Airbus, we work with ING Bank, we work with Ingenico, we work with lots of recruitment consultants as well. We also work with certain universities who are interested in looking at the potential of graduates who are leaving as well as working with companies who use us for graduate intake, because again, potential is a huge idea when you're looking at somebody with very little work experience. So that's the end of our webinar. Anybody who's joined us, you can actually ask questions. If anybody's got some, you can just type them in. Hopefully, you've been interested in the presentation that we gave to you today, and we'll just have a look here if there's any questions that come up. So we have one here where someone's asking, how reliable is the assessment? We do 3 different ones, as Addy showed you. So there's shape for personality, there's drive for brain, there's drive for motivation, for forgetting how to speak, and there's brain for how someone thinks. And each one takes around 10 minutes to do. Brain takes a little longer, sort of between 12 and 15 minutes. Shape and drive ask certain statements, and you have to reply to 2 choices. It's pretty exhaustive in the way that it works. And we use what we call item response theory, meaning how fast you answer, how spontaneously you answer, how slowly you go. Also with brain, so when you're doing the maths questions, we have a good understanding of the type of person you are. So it's very, very difficult for you to kind of hide your true personality in it. Scientifically, we would say sort of from 80 or 85%, it's a very good indicator of who that person is. It's not a crystal ball, but it will give you more information about who that person is, the way that they'll behave, what motivates them, the way they think, than their CV, a telephone interview, even a long interview with that person. You're not necessarily going to get the detailed information, which, let's not forget, is giving you a lot of information about what that person's natural strengths are as well.
Looks like we got another question here. At what stage of the recruiting process should we introduce an assessment? It's a great question. We leave that decision completely up to you. Every company operates differently, right? So sometimes we have people who have so many candidates that they just don't have enough time to give everyone the attention to detail that they deserve. So as you saw in the recruitment campaign, you have all your candidates that are plugged in, anyone who's taken the assessment associated with your campaign. And we have that magic button. And the purpose of that most people use it for, is to save them time. So if you just don't have the time to look at everyone, it'll automatically reduce your pool of candidates in the beginning and make sure that the people that you do spend time looking at are the highest quality candidates. So it'll save you a lot of time. Sometimes you have selected your amount of candidates that are high quality and you're just not sure what's the next step, how to make that decision, because perhaps there are several that you can't decide between. So people can use the assessment there to do the manager fit. the culture fit and see what are the soft skills, what are the elements that we can't tell that are the outside of the technical skills that will work to their advantage into the company. So you can use it to minimize your pool of candidates, or you can also use it to reduce the amount of candidates from the very beginning.
Different clients use it in different ways, and also even sometimes the same client will, depending on the role, use it in a different way. So, if we're talking about retail here, you can have mass candidates coming in maybe for a shop floor, or even maybe for managerial within a shop floor, but for kind of higher up roles, management roles, leadership roles, you might actually have less candidates for that. You might be headhunting for that. And in that kind of case, you wouldn't necessarily use it at an early pre-selecting stage, but more when you've kind of got your candidates down to 3 or 4 people, where you can actually use analytics and you can actually use data to see how well that person is going to perform, rather than going on your gut feeling, on how you felt within the interview, or all of those unconscious biases that we know exist when we're interviewing people. There's one more question here, Addy, which is, what is the candidate experience like?
Well, the candidate experience is really great. What sets apart Assess First from other companies is that when you're taking the time to fill out each of the assessments, right? So it's the 3 assessments around 10 minutes each. So you're spending a half an hour to 45 minutes total. You're going to want to get something out of it, right? So a lot of other assessments, they'll take the assessment, they won't be able to see their results, they're not going to get anything out of it. Here at Assess First, when you complete your assessment, you're going to get access to a summary of your profile. So you'll be able to have a very clear and visual snapshot of what your personality is like in terms of a workspace environment, what your motivators are in the context of work, and what your aptitude is. So how quickly you can manipulate data and analyze information. So you're going to have access to that. On top of that, we have something called orientation, where through our 400 benchmark models that we've created, we'll be able to apply your results to each of those models and show you how you will succeed and how you will thrive in each role. So you can filter by function, and then within each function, we have subcategories of jobs. So if you are, for example, a college student and you're not quite sure what career path you want, and you're not quite sure how to parlay your skills into a work environment, you can use the orientation to see what functions suit your personality, your motivations, and your aptitude best, and perhaps give you that little push in the right direction to see that you might want to try something out, or maybe what you were thinking suits you quite well.
And I would say, one of the big strong points about Assess First, and one of the big differentiators between us and similar companies, is that feedback that we give to candidates, and also the reports that we make available, or the platform that Addy showed today. Everything that we say about candidates, or the information that we give, is very, very clear, very easy to understand. There's no kind of difficult language. We make the platform as easy to use as possible, and its ease of use, its simplicity, it's the way in which it's kind of dynamic and pleasing to use, both for candidates as well as for recruiters, is a really huge plus in terms of using Assess First as a tool.
Looks like those are all the questions we have for today. Just want to thank everyone for joining us. We're available if you guys want to reach out via email. We'll post the webinar on YouTube as well on the Assess First channel. And
thanks a lot for everyone who joined us. And that's it from us today.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.